The alien council chamber was silent, filled only with the hum of machines. Dozens of tall, thin creatures with glowing eyes watched the giant screen in front of them. On that screen was Earth's symbol, the blue and green planet that had only recently joined the stars. The Supreme Overseer, a pale creature with silver skin, finally spoke. Humans believe they are ready to be part of the galactic community. We shall prove them wrong. The trial of species has broken empires. It will break them too. The others nodded in agreement. For thousands of years, the council had used this trial to test newcomers. No species had ever passed. Each time, the test ended with screams, despair, and finally extinction. But this time was different. The overseer's lips curled in what could almost be called a smile. Humans think themselves strong. They fight wars, they adapt to harsh lands, they survive their own violence. Yet against our trial, they will collapse. The galaxy will see their weakness. A signal was given. In a moment, hundreds of humans were taken, soldiers, scientists, explorers, even ordinary people, and transported into the simulation world of the alien test. None of them were told what was happening. The simulation was designed to crush body and spirit. Poison storms filled the sky. The ground cracked with lava rivers. Strange predators with claws like blades hunted endlessly. Food and water were almost impossible to find. Alien observers leaned forward, waiting for the first screams, the first panic, the first breakdown. But something strange happened. The first group of humans looked around at the hellish landscape. Instead of falling to fear, one of them, an older soldier with scars across his face, laughed. His laugh was raw and confident. Looks like boot camp all over again. Another human, a young woman with dirt on her cheek, smirked. Boot camp? This feels like a warm-up jog. The aliens exchanged nervous glances. This was not how species usually reacted. Within the first hour, humans had already formed groups, built makeshift weapons from rocks and broken metal, and scouted safe zones for resting. Where other species had cried and begged for mercy, humans were making jokes and giving each other nicknames. One alien scientist whispered, "Do they not understand the danger?" Another replied in a low voice, "They understand. That's the problem. And they are not afraid." The screen zoomed in on a human soldier carrying a younger man on his back. The man's leg had been wounded by one of the traps, but the soldier didn't leave him behind. Instead, he shouted to the others, "Keep moving. Nobody gets left behind." The council chamber grew tense. Other species had fought for themselves. They betrayed each other, stole resources, and killed their own kind to survive. But humans were doing the opposite. They shared food. They risked their lives for one another. The overseer narrowed his glowing eyes. This is only the beginning. Increase the difficulty. New storms appeared. Acid rain began to fall, burning through trees and melting stone. Alien predators grew larger, faster, deadlier. And still, the humans adapted. One group built shelters from the wreckage of fallen structures. Another used fire to scare away the predators. The wounded were treated using simple tools and torn cloth. The observers could not believe it. "How are they moving so quickly?" one alien muttered. "They should be breaking. They should be screaming. Why are they laughing?" Because yes, there was laughter. Despite the horror around them, the humans joked. They mocked the danger. A young human even shouted into the storm, "Is that all you've got?" The overseer slammed a clawed hand against the table. They cannot last. Push them harder. But even as the test grew more brutal, the humans grew stronger. They sang old songs around fires. They shared stories from Earth. They reminded each other of home, of family, of promises to survive. And the aliens began to realize something that made their skin crawl: humans were not just surviving. They were thriving. Hours passed. On the screens, the human groups were no longer merely reacting, they were planning. They studied the patterns of storms, the behavior of predators, the layout of the strange world. Slowly, humans began to notice cracks in the test itself. Glitches. Hidden doors. Signs that this world was not real. The overseer stared in silence as one human pointed at the horizon and said, "This isn't just a survival game. This is a cage. And cages have doors." A ripple of unease spread through the alien council. No species had ever spoken like this during the trial. Then came the moment that froze every alien heart. A human soldier, covered in dirt and blood, looked directly into one of the hidden cameras. His eyes burned with fire, and his lips twisted into a grin. He raised his fist and shouted words that shook even through the speakers. "This is nothing but a warm-up. Do you hear me? A warm-up." The chamber fell silent. The overseer's silver skin paled. For the first time in centuries, fear touched the council. And so, the test that had destroyed civilizations had finally met its match. Humans had only just begun. The alien council chamber was restless. Silence no longer ruled the room, instead, whispers of disbelief filled the air. The humans were not breaking. They were not crying. They were not even begging for mercy. They were laughing. The overseer's voice cut through the whispers like a blade. "Increase the storms. Triple the predators. Tighten the traps. I want them crushed." The command was obeyed instantly. In the simulation, the skies grew darker. Lightning flashed across the black clouds. Acid rain fell harder, burning through rock and leaving smoking holes in the ground. Predator beasts, larger than tanks, stalked the humans with glowing eyes and teeth sharp enough to cut steel. Any other species would have scattered. They would have turned on each other, clawing for scraps. But the humans, they only grew closer together. A group of 10 humans huddled in the ruins of a collapsed tower. Among them was a woman named Sarah, a medic. She tore strips from her own uniform to bandage a man's bleeding arm. "You'll live," she said firmly, though her hands were shaking from exhaustion. The man smiled weakly. "That's good. My wife would kill me if I died here." The others chuckled despite the danger outside. That laugh, small and tired, echoed louder than the storm. Nearby, a soldier named Davis peered out from a broken wall. He watched as the predator beasts circled the ruins. His jaw tightened, but his voice was calm. "All right, people. We move at dawn. We'll draw those things away, then head for higher ground. No one gets left behind." The humans nodded. There was no argument, no fear in their eyes. Only determination. In another part of the simulation, a group of younger humans had built a shelter from metal scraps and fallen branches. They had fire burning inside, smoke rising into the sky. One of them, barely 20 years old, roasted something that looked like alien meat on a stick. "Not bad," he said, biting into it. "Tastes like chicken." The others burst out laughing. The alien observers were horrified. "Why do they laugh in the face of death?" one asked. "Why do they not despair?" whispered another. The overseer's claws scraped the table. Because they are fools. They do not yet understand the depth of this trial. But deep inside, even he felt unease. The next day, the predators struck. Dozens of monstrous creatures charged into the ruins, their roars shaking the air. The humans fought back not with advanced weapons, but with sharp sticks, stones, and fire. One soldier leapt forward with nothing but a broken pipe in his hands. He swung it with such fury that the predator staggered. Another human jumped onto the beast's back, stabbing again and again until it collapsed. Blood soaked the ground, but the humans stood tall. They dragged their wounded back into cover, refusing to abandon a single one. The alien council watched in stunned silence. No species, no one has ever stood their ground against the predators, one scientist said. They always run. Always. Yet the humans did not run. Hours later, when the storm returned, the humans sang. Their voices rose together, echoing across the dark sky. Some sang old military songs. Others sang lullabies. The melodies were rough and broken, but they carried power. In the council chamber, the sound of that singing made the aliens shiver. It was not the sound of fear. It was defiance. The overseer's voice was cold. They will not last forever. They are flesh and bone. Push harder. Back in the simulation, Sarah the medic was treating a child. No one knew how the child had been selected for the trial, but he was there, alone and afraid. Sarah crouched beside him, holding his small hands. "You're safe now," she whispered. But the monsters," the boy stammered. She smiled gently. "We'll deal with the monsters. That's what humans do." The boy looked at her with wide eyes, and for the first time since he arrived, he didn't feel fear. Later, the humans discovered something strange. One group noticed the storm seemed to follow patterns. Another realized the predators were drawn to specific areas. A third group mapped the terrain and found impossible shapes, angles that didn't exist in nature. Slowly, piece by piece, humans began to understand, this world was not real. It was a machine. Davis stared at the map his team had scratched into the dirt. His voice was low but steady. "They want us to break. But if this is a machine, then machines can be broken too." The others nodded. They didn't just want to survive anymore. They wanted to fight back. In the council chamber, alarms rang. The humans had destroyed one of the predator nests. They had cleared safe zones, built watchtowers, and even started setting traps for the creatures that hunted them. The overseer's silver eyes burned with fury. They are not playing the trial. They are rewriting it. One scientist dared to whisper, perhaps the humans cannot be broken." The overseer slammed his claws into the table. "Everything breaks. Everything." But even as his words echoed, the screen showed something terrifying, humans standing on a hill, raising their fists to the storm, shouting together. Their voices were thunder itself. "This is nothing but a warm-up." The aliens froze. For the first time, they saw not prey, but predators. And deep inside, the galaxy began to tremble. The alien council chamber was filled with chaos. Screens flashed red warnings, data streams overloaded, and the hum of machines turned into a desperate wail. The humans were not supposed to last this long. They were not supposed to adapt. Yet here they were, stronger, smarter, and more dangerous with every passing hour. The overseer stood tall, his glowing silver eyes narrowing. "They think they can play games with us. They are mistaken. Increase the difficulty again." The chamber obeyed. The simulation twisted. Inside the trial world, the humans noticed the change immediately. The sky turned blood red. Earthquakes shook the land, splitting mountains in half. Predators came in swarms, now faster, smarter, their claws sharper than steel. But the humans didn't panic. Instead, they began to study. Captain Davis crouched on the ground, his hands tracing cracks that glowed faintly with blue light. "See this? These aren't natural. This whole place is a construct. It's a machine pretending to be a world." A scientist beside him nodded. "It's code made solid. That's why the storms repeat. That's why the ground shifts in patterns." Davis looked up, his face covered in dirt, his eyes blazing with fire. "Then we don't just survive it. We break it." The first breakthrough came when Sarah, the medic, treated a man with strange burns. She noticed the wound didn't behave like a real injury, it flickered, almost like bad graphics on a broken screen. "This isn't real flesh," she whispered. "This place is glitching." The others gathered around. They tested it. And soon they realized something shocking: the trial wasn't just trying to kill them, it was programmed to. Every detail, every storm, every beast was scripted. And scripts could be rewritten. The humans began testing the limits. One group lured a predator into a collapsing ravine. Instead of vanishing, the creature froze, its body twitching like a puppet with broken strings. Another team discovered that if they moved fast enough through certain zones, the storm couldn't keep up, it glitched, repeating the same lightning bolt over and over in the same spot. A young woman named Claire smirked as she pointed at the frozen predator. "Look at that. We've broken their toy." The others laughed, a sound that carried like fire across the ruins. The Alien Council watched in horror. "They've discovered the anomalies," one scientist shouted. "No one has ever seen through the system before. If they keep pushing, they will unravel everything." The overseer growled, his voice cold. "Then shut them down. Erase the failing sectors. Tighten the code." But it was already too late. Back inside the trial, the humans pushed deeper into forbidden zones. They found walls of light that shimmered like glass. When one man threw a stone at it, the wall rippled, revealing a glimpse of glowing machinery behind. Davis clenched his fists. "There. That's the heart of this place." The group nodded. For the first time, they weren't just survivors anymore. They were invaders inside the alien system. That night, as storms raged and predators circled, the humans didn't hide. They prepared. Spears were sharpened. Traps were set. Every man, woman, and child stood ready. When the predators came, they weren't met with fear. They were met with fury. Fire roared, stones flew, and humans attacked with a rage that shook the air. By dawn, the predators were dead. Their glowing bodies twitched and vanished into sparks of light. And behind them, the walls of the simulation flickered again, glitches spreading like cracks in a mirror. The overseer's claws dug into the table as he stared at the failing system. "This cannot be happening," he whispered. But deep down, he knew the truth. The humans were tearing the trial apart from the inside. "They're not surviving," one alien scientist said in a trembling voice. "They're dismantling the test." The final blow of the day came when a group of humans discovered a hidden tunnel that wasn't supposed to exist. Inside, they found machines, massive cores glowing with energy, cables running into the very ground. Claire touched one of the cores and smiled coldly. "This isn't a world. It's a cage. And cages have doors." Her words spread quickly through the survivors. Hope turned into fire. Determination turned into a weapon. For the first time in the history of the galaxy, the trial was no longer in control. The humans were. In the council chamber, the overseer's voice was low, almost fearful. They're breaking the system. The chamber went silent. Even the machines seemed to hold their breath. Then, on the largest screen, Captain Davis appeared. He was dirty, bruised, and bloodied, but his grin was wide and defiant. He looked straight into the hidden cameras, straight into the eyes of the aliens watching. "Is this all you've got?" he shouted. "Because to us this is still just a warm-up." The screen glitched. The chamber trembled. And for the first time in centuries, the unbreakable test was breaking apart piece by piece, under the hands of humanity. The alien council chamber was in panic. Screens across the walls flickered with static, alarms blared in sharp tones, and rows of data streams collapsed one after another. The great test, the one that had destroyed countless civilizations, was failing. And it was failing because of humans. The overseer's silver eyes glowed with fury. "Stabilize the system. Force the predators back online. Lock the doors of the simulation." But no matter how many commands were given, the system refused to obey. Humans had torn holes in its heart, and the machine bled errors like an injured beast. "They should have been broken," whispered one scientist. "They should be dust and bones." Another replied in a trembling voice, "Instead, they're learning. They're winning." Inside the trial world, the humans were on the move. Captain Davis led a group through a ruined valley where the walls shimmered like broken glass. Behind them, survivors carried the wounded, while scouts mapped out strange glitches in the landscape. Sarah, the medic, wiped sweat from her brow as she patched another wound. "This isn't just survival anymore," she said firmly. "We're taking this place apart, piece by piece." Claire, the young woman who had discovered the glowing cores earlier, smiled sharply. "Then let's take the fight to them. Whoever built this cage, let's show them who they're dealing with." The deeper the humans traveled, the more the world collapsed. Trees flickered in and out of existence. Mountains bent at impossible angles. Storms repeated the same thunderclap again and again, stuck like a broken song. And then, at the end of a shattered plain, they found it. A massive structure, black towers glowing with blue veins of light. It pulsed with energy, the heart of the trial itself. Davis raised his hand, stopping the group. His eyes locked on the towers. "That's it? That's where they're watching us from." The survivors gathered around him. Fear was there, yes, but behind it was fire. Back in the council chamber, the overseer stared at the same towers on his screen. His voice was sharp with command. "Seal the core. Activate the last defense." The towers began to shift. The ground split open, and machines rose from beneath, giant guardians forged of metal and light, each one taller than the ruins around them. Their eyes glowed red as they locked onto the humans. The council leaned forward, believing at last the humans would fall. But the humans didn't run. "Positions!" Davis roared. The survivors spread out instantly. They had no rifles, no alien tech, no armor. Only fire, sharp stone, broken pipes, and their fists. The first guardian charged, its footsteps shaking the plain. A soldier leapt onto its leg, jamming a sharpened spear between its plates. Sparks burst out. Another climbed its back, smashing wires with a metal rod. The humans swarmed the machines like wolves on prey. Explosions lit the sky. Metal giants fell one after another. Each time a human fell, others dragged them back and fought harder. Their voices rose in war cries, raw and powerful, echoing across the broken world. The alien council was silent. "This is impossible," one whispered. "No species could fight like this." "They do not fight for survival," another said slowly. "They fight for each other." The overseer slammed his claw against the table. "They cannot win. They must not win." But deep inside, even he felt the chill of fear. At last, the humans stood at the gates of the Black Towers. The guardians lay broken behind them, smoking heaps of shattered metal. The survivors were bruised, bloodied, and exhausted, but their eyes burned brighter than ever. The gates opened with a hiss, as if inviting them inside. The humans stepped forward. Inside, the heart of the simulation glowed, a massive core of light, surrounded by alien machinery. Screens shimmered around it, showing the galaxy, the council chamber, and the faces of the alien overseers who had watched them suffer. For the first time, humans looked directly into the eyes of their tormentors. Davis stepped forward, his voice steady and sharp. "So this is your test? A cage meant to break us? A game you thought we'd lose?" The overseer's voice echoed through the chamber, broadcast into the simulation. "You were meant to prove your weakness. Every species fails. Every species falls." Davis's lips curled into a grin. "Then you've just met the wrong species." Behind him, Claire raised her voice, filled with defiance. "You wanted to see if we could survive? Well, guess what, this was nothing but a warm-up." The survivors erupted in shouts, their fists raised high. In the council chamber, silence fell. For the first time, the overseer had no words. The humans had reached the very heart of their perfect machine, and instead of fear, they brought challenge. Sarah, standing beside Davis, added in a calm, steady tone. "If this was your hardest trial, then maybe you should be the ones preparing for us." The overseer's claws trembled. The council, once so sure of their power, now felt something they had not felt in centuries. Dread. Because humanity had given its answer. And the answer was clear: we don't break. The alien council chamber was frozen in silence. For the first time in centuries, their perfect trial had been breached. The humans stood inside the core itself, staring into the glowing heart of the machine. The overseer's voice cracked like thunder, but even he could not hide the fear in it. "You dare to defile the sacred trial? You dare to stand against the council?" Captain Davis's voice carried across the chamber, through the speakers, into every ear. "You built this trial to break us. But you forgot one thing: humans don't break." The words echoed. They were heavy, undeniable. Inside the simulation, alarms screamed as the humans advanced deeper into the core. Walls flickered, collapsing into raw streams of light. Sparks rained from the ceiling as the machine struggled to hold itself together. Claire reached out, pressing her hand against the glowing heart. The energy pulsed like a living thing. She looked over her shoulder, her voice strong and mocking. "You call this a test? To us, it was training. To us, it was a warm-up." Her words struck the council harder than any weapon could. Sarah stepped forward, carrying the child she had protected since the beginning. The boy's wide eyes reflected the glowing lights around them. She lifted her chin, staring at the council's holograms. "You tortured us. You watched us suffer. But you failed to understand. We are not like the others. We fight for each other. And that makes us unstoppable." The overseer hissed. His claws dug into the table until sparks flew. You do not know what you have unleashed. You will bring war upon yourselves. Davis smirked. His face was covered in blood and dirt, but his eyes shone with pride. Then let it come. Because we don't fear war. We are war. With those words, the humans struck. They tore into the core, smashing cables, ripping apart conduits, destroying the machine that held them prisoner. The world around them shattered. Mountains dissolved into mist, predators vanished into sparks, the sky itself cracked open like glass. The entire chamber of the alien council shook as the simulation collapsed. Lights died. Screens exploded into static. The unbreakable test was no more. For the first time in history, the trial of species had been destroyed not by retreat, not by surrender, but by human hands. The survivors emerged from the ruins of the collapsing world, carried out in beams of light. They stood once more in their own bodies, alive and breathing, inside alien ships that had once controlled them. But they were no longer the same. They were stronger, hardened, unshaken. And the galaxy was watching. Across the stars, broadcasts spread the footage of humans laughing at storms, fighting predators, tearing down machines with their bare hands. Every world, every empire, every species saw it. They saw the words etched into their memory. This is nothing but a warm-up. In the council chamber, fear ruled. One alien leader whispered, if this was their reaction to the trial, what happens when they face real war? Another answered, voice trembling, then the galaxy will bleed. The overseer, once proud and untouchable, now trembled with rage and dread. They were supposed to break, he muttered. They were supposed to show weakness. But deep inside, he knew the truth. Humanity had not just passed the test, they had destroyed the very foundation of galactic power. The humans, now freed, did not kneel. They did not beg. They stood tall, united. Davis looked into the recording device that streamed across the galaxy. His words were steady, clear, and unforgettable. You wanted to measure us. You wanted to see what we were made of. Now you know. We don't bend. We don't bow. We fight together. And if this was your greatest challenge. He raised his fist, dirt and blood dripping from it. Then the galaxy has no idea what happens when we finally get serious. The council chamber shook with silence. Not one alien dared to speak. They had seen enough. For the first time, the galaxy learned fear not of the trial, not of the predators, not of the storms, but of the humans who had conquered them all. And from that day forward, a new legend spread across the stars. The trial that broke civilizations was humanity's warm-up.